If you ever want to practice patience, you need to take part in the parade that we are a part of every week, every year. It's a wonderful parade. We got at the church at 8 o'clock. We left at about 8:30 in the morning. At about 20 minutes to 9 or so, we pulled into the parade area. The parade began at 11:51. And it was big, and it was wonderful, and it was glorious. And once we had a chance to do the march, it was a good thing. But it is a call to the practice of patience. Someone read the sermon topic for the morning and asked if it had anything to do with fudge, slow-acting divinity. Well, no, it doesn't. Trust in the slow activity of God. That's what it has to do with. And I think all too often you and I are not in that particular department. From time to time, I know I'm not. Yesterday, during the long wait, I had to find ways to be creative, to rest, to prepare, to actually make myself ready for the march. And it was later to come, and it was a grand experience. But life is like that, and life between us and the divine God is like that too. Sometimes the divine pace is not where we want it. More about that in just a minute. I have a brand new watch. I don't know if any of y'all noticed. It's pretty a sassy-looking watch. It's a copy of an antique watch. And someone lovingly said, an antique for one. That wasn't nice, was it? Anyway, with the help of our kids at the home, Pat gave me this watch for my birthday yesterday. And the watch is nice. It's not expensive. It's a nice watch. But I'll tell you what is valuable to the point of being without price. Pat wrote a little love note to me. For a person who is a brilliant research scientist who can't use the computer anymore, for a person who has difficulty reading and great difficulty writing. It didn't all make sense to a lot of people the way they would have read it, but I did read one part that said, how much I love you. And that's absolute pure grace, and I know it. And it's a hard time for her, and it's a hard time for me. And I'm going to tell you something. I would rather be a bold witness to a miraculous healing than a caretaker called to love in spite of anything. But the plain and gospel truth is that I, together with you, you've been a lovely community of supportive people. Not just for us, but for other people too. And a magnificent family, people who are willing to sacrifice their own time and energy so that we might make it together. I wish it were rapid. I wish it were immediate, but it's not. It's slow. And yet in it, every now and then, in those marvelous moments, you sort of take a deep breath and say, in all this, we're not alone. I know in all this, God is also present. Well, you and I are the instant coffee generation, instant everything. The other day, I mixed up instant breakfast, instant carnation breakfast. It's kind of neat because Mary Ann brought us a whole case of this stuff, and it was this chocolate instant breakfast, and we had so many. I said, well, Pat won't do many of these, so we'll just give some of them to the food pantry. And so I took out 4, and Pat just loved them, and she said, I want some more. And I couldn't find them. We've got instant everything. And that's kind of the way we approach the whole world of philosophy, the whole world of theology. We want this, we want it now. We need that, we expect it to happen instantaneously, And we are long on wantings and desirings, and sometimes sort of short on waiting and short on patient. So remember that. God is not limited in time the way we are. God is at work whether we see it or not. The slow work of God is something that we are called to acknowledge and also to trust that we are not abandoned, that we are not left alone, that we will see healing and saving and redemption and the restoration of the divine will on earth as it is in heaven one of these days. And God continues to work with us in that. You know what's the tough thing? The tough thing is the in-between time. That time that we acknowledge the fact that God is sort of at work, but that God is forming and leading us when we are not fully aware of it. That God is giving direction not only for our lives when we are not enclouded every single moment with glory, but just with the ordinary events of human existence. That's the time when our faith is most keenly, most carefully tested, in that intermediate reality. God is forming you and God is guiding you, and God is forming me, and God is guiding me too. And you know all the ways. And you can stop and look and sometimes see it. And sometimes it's subtle. Einstein once said, God is subtle. It's interesting. But God is also ever present. And in these moments, in these times of waiting, hold on tightly. The other thing is, don't be passive. You know, if you're in between thing, don't sit around not doing anything. Work the works of him that sent you while it's still day, because the night comes when you can't work. And as we were talking about this in Sunday school just a few minutes ago, Shane Stanford, that used to run the Methodist Hour thing, said, if you can't do everything, do something. And if you can't do, you don't know exactly what to do right now, just ask yourself this question: Lord, what is it that you have in mind that you would like for me to do today? Be careful with that question. But what do you have in mind that you'd like for me to do this very day? And you'll be amazed, because you'll get an idea, or have a thought, or get a telephone call, or make a telephone call. Or something will come to pass that will give you an opportunity to witness for God on this very day. One of the neat things that illustrates this is on the parade, we do something real special. And I'm not trying to say we're special. I'm trying to say we have chosen to do something special. We don't throw beads. We don't throw candy. It's kind of interesting. Let me make this a dialogue for just a minute, because we had a discussion about this last night and got on the calculator. Son, where are you? Okay, there you are. Tell them approximately how many beads yesterday. Make sure we can hear you. Over 10,000 beads that we shared with people yesterday. Now, you know what that means? Over 10,000 beads were placed in somebody's hand, not thrown at somebody or toward somebody, placed in their hand, okay? Every now and then they would ask for 2, so some people would get 2. But we always make a point of looking as far as we can to see those people that can't get down to the parade because of infirmity or age or whatever. And so there's this little house near the end of the parade, way up on the hill. And when I passed it, I looked up there, and everybody was giving the beads in the front because there were lots of people there. But this old man and this old woman were there, and there was an older lady standing in the door. And so I headed up the hill toward that house. I did not remember ever doing that before, going to that house before. But when I got there, the man said, "Thank God you finally came." He said, "We knew you were going to come." And he said, "We knew you weren't going to pass us up." Wow. God, sometimes when you least expect it, in these wonderful and marvelous ways, you know. So hold on to the fact that the divinity of God is slow working, and that you can release this anxiety that you feel about, is God going to do it? Is God going to do it right now? What's going on in my life? Is my life worthy? Is my ministry significant? And I don't want you to be afraid of that word ministry, because whether you like it or not, if you believe in God, you are called to be a minister. Some of us the kind that stand up front, and some of us the kind that simply live it out wherever we live. But hold on to that, because you need to do that. When I was a kid, I worked on a shrimp boat, and sometimes on the long, cold nights of winter, we would have to go out very, very early, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And my uncle Larry LaRue was, I learned a lot of things from that Cajun man. And but one of the things I learned about from him was the appreciation of a new day. And so it was dark, and it was cold, and it was a little overcast, and we were supposed to get some sun, and we owned the fishing boat, and he was standing there, and I went out a little bit later, and he was standing there, and I went out a little bit later, he was standing there smoking his pipe, and I said, "Uncle Larry, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm waiting for the dawn to come." And he turned to me and he said, "Keith, and the dawn will come." My dear brothers and sisters, the next time you find yourself caught up in wondering if God's at work, it's slow, but the dawn will come. One postscript and we're done. We, at conference, when our conferences came together, we brought together the historic central jurisdiction, which was the black conference, together with the white conference. And we had one of the preachers from that group preach for us. And I don't remember everything he preached, but I do remember his closing remark from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. He said, "Are you anxious out there?" In his own particular style. "Are you having great difficulty figuring out why God isn't doing what you want God to do when you want God to do it? Are you getting a little bit uptight because things aren't functioning according to your schedule but God's schedule? He said, "Let me tell you something that'll help you a whole lot." He said, "You listening?" He said, "We see through a glass darkly." But one day, face to face. I'm not trying to imitate somebody else. I'm just trying to give you a little authentic moment. I got a lot of questions for God. And some of them aren't easy questions. Don't know about you. But one of the questions I guess I'm going to ask is, why didn't you do it more rapidly? More quickly. And I'll get an answer. But I had a guy walking out of the church this morning after the service was over. He said, I want to tell you something. He said, I got all those questions too. And he said, I presented them questions to my preacher, the guy that I loved that was my preacher when I was a kid. And he said, God will be more than willing to deal with them all, but the minute you walk through the pearly gates, none of it will matter at all. God bless God, and God bless us. And remember, trust the slow work of God, because God is working. Amen.